So good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. My name is Basma Alawi, and I am so glad to welcome you to the community conversation. This webinar is being recorded, and we encourage you to use the Q&A feature to submit questions for our panelists. For safety reason, the chat is one way, but our team will share link and resources throughout and even after the webinar. And let's start. Today marks 4 years since the US withdrew from Afghanistan. For many Afghans, the journey to safety and belonging is still unfolding, and we gather to reflect on what has changed, what still needs our attention, and how sponsorship and advocacy play a role in keeping the promise of welcome alive. We are honored to be joined by three incredible guests. Anna Lloyd, who is retired Marine Corps and leader of Task Force Argo. Joshua Noble, who is a U.S. Army and medical student who has walked alongside Afghan allies. Jennifer Squire, who began volunteering in 2021 and is now sponsoring an Afghan family. And really, I wanted to start first to go back to August 2021. Anna, Josh, and Jennifer, I would like if you can take us back to that moment. What stands out most in your memory from that time and the weeks that followed that day? Um, so I will start with Anna. I would love to hear your reflection from that time.
Thank you for having me and Jennifer and Joshua with all of you today. And thank you for this question. Basma, August 2021 was absolutely catastrophic and it was horrible. And there was not one Signal message, one Facebook message, one Excel, one email, one person to coordinate any of the chaos there on the ground. How we were able to communicate with our Afghan allies was very individualized and personalized and in unsecure manner as well over the internet. It was a time when we found people of trust and strength help us. It was a time when I found people who I thought would be a sure pathway to the answer, which gate to get the Afghan ally through at the H. Kaya there, the airport. It was difficult, it was challenging, it was sad. So many of us volunteers here in America and around the world communicating with our Afghan allies didn't sleep, we didn't eat. We were trying to stay awake for any glimmer of hope, any bit of information that could help us get the Afghan allies through those Taliban perimeter checkpoints and through the gates there in H. Kaya. And I know that so many share this story as well and acted as they did in August and the months thereafter and up until today. So I'll definitely let Josh share now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Josh?
Yes, ma'am. Um, Absolutely agreed. It was a very chaotic time. So my now wife, then girlfriend, was living with me in Alaska at the time. I was freshly back from Afghanistan. I think I got back in October 2020, and it was day in and day out, just continuously running operations. She had to tell me at some point to go to bed. Sometimes I'd tell her no, sorry, but then she'd be loving and supporting and bring me food as I'm continuously on the phone. We're tracking their locations for each of my linguists, different service members I worked with, and utilizing the community resources. I think there was a gentleman, I'm trying to remember his full username, because that a lot of it was through social media. But it was essentially S2 Ghost, something like that, where they had a live map and people could input where checkpoints were. And this was just on the public domain, so everyone could direct their personnel through different mazes. Somehow I got in contact with a Air Force guy on base, and then through the grapevine found a big community of people that were all working together. But it was a lot of Chaos, a lot of figuring things out as we went along. But it's just definitely something I won't forget. And then we're continuing to do our work today still.
Thank you so much, Josh, and I'm very grateful for these reflections. I will say in 2021, um, I I really watched, advocated for the Afghans while also we're traumatized by that. The pictures, the videos, the scenes on TV, and reflecting with my husband, who also we went through similar journey back in 2010 from Iraq, and really trying to find ways to help the community and activating the diaspora community here in the US in welcoming the Afghans during that time. And I was very impressed to see Afghan community members stepping in while veterans and faith groups, communities really want to welcome. Um, and, and, and you just reflected on how communities have stepped in and really took it very personally to welcome Afghans to their homes, to their communities, and make sure that they have the support they need on the ground. Jennifer, I want to hear where you were during that time.
So my story is a little bit different from Anna and Joshua in that prior to 2021, I was a volunteer with Catholic Charities. I had been a volunteer there for a number of years through the Safe Passages program. And as a volunteer in August of 2021, I started receiving emails from the CEO of Catholic Charities Atlanta, indicating that they were going to start receiving a large quantity of Afghan refugees. And they were looking for partners, specifically to assist their caseworkers because they did not have enough staff to manage the number of cases that they were going to be receiving. And so they were hoping to find churches who would partner and provide additional support for families who just had different circumstances that required additional support. And so I got that message and I thought, well, I'll pass that along to my church. Sounds like a great opportunity for someone to get involved because I was already involved in another capacity. And, um, at our church, there was a huge, willingness and interest to be involved. However, there was no one who really stepped in to fill that role. And so I um, kind of got assigned that task unintentionally. It was not my plan because I was already busy with other volunteer duties. And all of a sudden I found myself, welcoming a family in October of 21. They had traveled the route that Joshua and Anna just spoke of, trying to, get out of Kabul, um, and, going through those checkpoints at the airport. They were on one of those military flights that we all saw, leaving Kabul. So that's how I got involved. Very different from Anna and Joshua, sort of an accidental participant in all of it. But ever since then, that's what I've been doing.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So after 4 years, we are here again. But really, I would, from my observation, more even engage and more involved in continue to not give up and really keep our promise to those communities who have served and saved our communities abroad. So I wanted to really talk about what's happening today, 4 years after, what has changed, what are the biggest barriers the Afghan community is facing at the moment, and whether here in the US or really outside, waiting broadly. So I want to start with Anna to really reflect, but also take us into the moment now, and hear from Anna of the moment. What could the communities need to know now?
Thank you, Basma. In order to talk about today, we do need to go back a little bit for Task Force Argo's story and the work and why we remain involved and we haven't drifted away from the mission of Afghan allies. And when the last plane left in August of 2021, Task Force Argo and all the volunteers had all of our Afghan allies and American citizens left behind. And when the chaos took place on the ground, we took advantage of that chaos. And in the months of September and October of 2021, we moved 2,100 Afghan allies and American citizens 10 hours north through 14 Taliban checkpoints to a place called Mazar Sharif, where another airport was there. We were able to move those 2,100 Afghan allies and American citizens on planes, chartered planes, through private donations, to the United Arab Emirates, where the royal families of UAE housed them. When we say house them, they offered them diapers and formula and cancer treatment and a safe place to stay while their visas were processed. Today, a special immigration visa, if perfectly aligned with perfect application, no grammatical errors, perfect translations, a letter of recommendation that's highly endorsed with all the information, an SIV, a special immigrant visa, can take 796 days to process. And that's with no errors, nowhere where the National Visa Center has to go back to say, oh, this is wrong. You need to submit an additional, or you left this out, right? So some of our Afghan allies, American citizens, they stayed there for 30 days. The American citizens stayed there for 30 days. They were able to be processed immediately for onward movement to America. And others stayed there for a year, some 2 years. We're very, very thankful to the royal families of UAE and to our contacts that helped us get these planes to UAE. Joseph Robert Blackfeather Foundation and others. We're very grateful. Like Joshua said, it was a community that a person knew a person, and if you said you knew somebody, it was automatic trust. People who could not perform, who could not perform operations, did not know the logistical routes, how to manifest, how to keep them safe as best as we could, they dropped off really quickly. And the ones that stay involved were the players that knew how to do this. This was our job. I'm retired, but this was some of my job while I was in the Marine Corps. We have three-letter agency individuals. We have retirees, veterans. We have active duty. We have civilians. We have grandmas. We have interns. Task Force. We have members of Congress in Task Force Argo. And none of us wanted to give up. We received these messages of hope, desperation and pleas. And, we had so many injuries along the way. We had women giving birth in safe houses. We had, the Taliban shot one of our Afghan allies in the foot, and we were able to get him on a plane to UAE in just within the few hours. We were applying World War II medical treatment and triage to the injured Afghan allies. It was a very traumatic time. And I can't thank enough all the volunteers, Task Force Argo and others, and Josh and you, Basma, and those listening today, and Jennifer, who stayed involved when America turned their back and left Afghanistan. And I also want to thank the Afghans who were on the ground, who knew that they could not board these planes, but they were the ones running operations for us, getting our Afghan allies on the plane, knowing what they were about to face if they did not do it. And I have learned a new level of humanitarian compassion and love because of those Afghans on the ground in Afghanistan that put their life on the line. Very emotional, very proud of them, right? So the planes, Taliban found out what we were doing, and the planes stopped. The operations were turned off from Mazar Sharif. And it took a few months of a little bit of what's going to happen, what's going on, and then State Department got involved. And in 2022, State Department flew 28 planes a month out of Kabul because they knew all the Afghan allies were left behind. Now, we did not ask questions as a volunteer organization of what was your diplomatic agreement to get these Afghan allies on this plane to Kabul. We just knew our Afghan allies that were left behind were receiving help. And they flew to different lily pads, Qatar, Albania, Germany, the Philippines. And that went on every month, 28 flights a month. It went on for a few years. And then to fast forward to 2025, January 2025, the executive orders stopped the International Organization migration travel loans and the USREP refugee process. It's really important that the audience knows that an Afghan ally does qualify for a visa if they were a direct employee and contractor to the United States government. Honorable and faithful work of 1 year, a direct contractor, you qualify for a visa. If you were paid in cash, if you were contracted to a contractor, if you had the most dangerous work and you were that interpreter, the minesweeper, paid in cash, you do not qualify for a visa. You qualify for this refugee USRAP process. You're highly endorsed by an ambassador, by a member of Congress, by a general officer, flag officer. So for that executive order to turn off the USRAP process, it was devastating. It still is devastating. These people have fled to other countries for safety, thinking that they were somewhere in the process to be have onward relocation through USRAP. So we face that challenge right now. So the refugee process was turned off, and the IOM travel loans. And the IOM travel loans, our Afghan allies fled to other countries to go to an embassy to have their visas processed. And once they received their visas, they said, I'm ready to go. Can I get that IOM travel loan? And State Department said it's turned off. We don't have the funds. So now they're stranded. So we do have an additional item that took place in June of 2025, which is the presidential proclamation. And that presidential proclamation did grant an exemption while Afghanistan remains as a country on the travel ban. Uh, this administration did give Afghan allies an exemption, and family immigration visas also an exemption. So today, Task Force Argo works with Community Sponsorship Hub and the Welcoming Initiative for Newcomers to help those stranded SIVs, those that are exempted with US visas and valid passports, have onward relocation and resettlement here in America. Thank you for letting me share that entire story. It's just really important to say that here we are again in 2025 with private donations, with private citizens. And, Jennifer, you said, you just fell into this work. I just fell into this work. Task Force Argo just fell into this work. Joshua did too. And it's so important. We're not going to turn our back. And there's so much more to share. Thank you. I'll pause for now, but I really appreciate you letting me share that story and all of that.
Thank you so much, Anna. I will say after the stop work order or the refugee processing stopped, I will say what gave me hope and it grounded me when I heard that because of your work, Anna, and other veteran-led organization in late January this year, that we are able to still welcome Afghans, and because of your referral and your vetting process overseas and how you were able to connect with the Afghan communities. And of course, because of WIN team in helping with the travel, we were able to welcome and really activate the sponsors nationwide to say, I mean, you still can welcome, you still can welcome Afghans to your communities and give our communities something that they can really do during this hard time. So I really appreciate your leadership and your team who continue to commit to this work and continue to give us really opportunities to support and welcome Afghans. Really appreciate it. Josh, Jennifer, would love to hear where are you now? How you are continuing to stay engaged, and what the audience should learn from you.
Yeah, so the situation currently is kind of up in the air. I know that there's been work done with the Supreme Court to kind of block some of the executive orders, and that's kind of caught in litigation. I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak too much on that. But for the families that I'm still working with, still sponsoring, they've had to deal with visa expirations and then arrest. I think my main guy that I sponsored through a DoD program for a P1 visa, he got arrested and was put in jail for 40 days. And then after being released, he was starting to be contacted by I think it was IOM was actually the go-between for people in Pakistan, because a lot of the P1s you have to leave Afghanistan to be considered for a P1 visa. So I moved them when the flight stopped in 2021. I moved them to Islamabad, and that's where they've been for 4 years and having to work with the whole visa issues and application processing. And so IOM was contacting my main applicant to schedule flights to the United States. In, I want to say November was the first one. He responded with the information that he needed to respond. No response from IOM. They contacted him again in December. Same thing. He immediately sent the information, no response. And then January came and everything got shut off. And we also had his whole family who were all service members. There was his father was a colonel who worked with U.S. forces. He was a captain in the special operations branch of the Afghan army. His brother was also special operations. His other brother was a linguist, and then all the women, of course, supported the U.S. effort, and supported a democratic Afghan government, and they were all part of this welcome for application that I had submitted. And after January hit, that got shut off completely. And so for me, and some of my teammates that stuck around for the last 4 years, including some wonderful donors that have helped us, we were just kind of like, what do we do now? Some people took it a lot harder. After 4 years of dealing with, imprisonment, deportation, all these things, I said, that's fine. Time to move to the next thing. Let's figure out the next route. And you just move on. Maybe it's compartmentalization. I don't know what. You just kind of figure out where you're supposed to go next. And so we just started looking around to see what options we still had. And in addition to trying to get the family out and dealing with a lot of their deportation from Pakistan as well, I specifically started working with a good contact of mine in Nicole to contact congressmen. I contacted my own Congress people to try to advocate for reopening this pathway for the United States, because if there's anyone that's worthy of joining the United States, it's people who are willing to put their lives to the side for the United States. So that's been the thing that we've been working on continuously. It's just kind of advocating. And then for my people right now, like for example, great news today, I just heard that they got new visas, so they're able to stay a little bit longer where they're at right now. But we're continuously every day still trying to work. Other big issue is financing. I'm a college student. I'm trying to get into medical school, and so I wish I could support them fully on my own, but I have to contact churches or some lovely donors that I've worked with previously to see what they recommend for finding finances, because it all costs money. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. To stay alive, to stay active and able to continue on with this process, it costs money. You have your housing and your for the little kids, you have the education products and food, and they're not able to work. If you have Afghans that are in Pakistan, they're not allowed to work, at least not legally. Not allowed to work in Pakistan, so you have to support them fully. And for a family of 13, that costs a lot over time. So that's kind of like where we're at right now, is just trying to figure it out. I know it's been 7 months since January, so we're slowly making progress in getting back on our feet after feeling like we got punched. But it's just a continuous effort, pretty much.
Thank you so much, Josh. And I will say, I think that's the beauty of community sponsorship. Like you don't do it alone, and you invite the whole society to support you in supporting the families you are working with. Thank you so much for sharing, and for your commitment to the families you are supporting. Um, Jennifer, maybe you can take it from Josh and how you have been welcoming, where you are now in the welcoming journey. And you have mobilized communities and fundraise, and you did it all. So would love to hear about your reflection and where you are now.
Yeah, so like I said previously, there was a lot of support when we were approached by Catholic Charities Atlanta to get involved and assist with family arriving. And so we were paired with our first family in October of 21. And we are still they're still friends. You know, they haven't gone anywhere. We are still actively involved with the family. Very glad to have that relationship with them. Uh, After we supported that family, and the way we supported the family initially was just very simple things, asking for shoes, toys, clothing, just very basic household items. When the family first arrived, they were provided with a very basically furnished apartment. That was how the process was working at that time. And but they didn't have things like curtains or an extra set of sheets if someone, got sick during the night, just very basic things you just don't think of that you need for a household. So that's the way we supported. And also, when the family first arrived, they didn't have any way to get around. They didn't have a driver's license. And so we would just assist with getting to doctor's appointments or, a trip to Walmart, whatever it might be. And then from there, we were asked to assist with a second family. And so we added another family. And then that following summer of 22 was when refugees started arriving from Ukraine. So then we were paired with two families from Ukraine. So we have expanded a lot, but at every turn, the church community was just incredibly supportive. And the thing that I really found, and I'd like to encourage others to think about when you think, oh my gosh, how could you possibly support four different families at one time? And it seems like a lot, but um, it started out as a party of one, and that was me. And then as I started providing updates to the church community, I had the support from the priest at my church to just include whatever information I could in our church bulletin. And that's how it grew, was just having access to that communication and providing regular updates on what our family was doing. Hey, they got to go to school today, and I would just put in any little story I could think of to generate interest and just share what the experience of the family was, what was going on. And the thing that is really amazing is that um, people want to help. They may not have the ability to interact with a family. That may not be their skill set. I didn't think it was mine, but I guess it turns out to be. So, but other people are really generous with their material goods and with all that they have. And I find that if anytime I put a request out, I always get it back. Always. There's never been a request. I mean, even to the extent of, getting a car. I mean, you name it, we have asked for it and we have gotten it. Dental assistance, rent assistance, anything along the way. Um, and I really think the difference is that when people know who they're supporting, even though they don't know them, they feel like they know them because they're hearing little bits of their story. Um, as me and the other volunteers have interacted with these families. That's really the biggest thing. Um, to keep in mind, it's not as overwhelming a task as it might sound. And then the other thing I'd like to share is I know that Anna and Joshua were sharing, kind of how things have changed for them. And what changed for us most substantially was that we made the decision a year ago that we wanted to take the step to welcome a family through Welcome Corps. And Welcome Corps was a program that the State Department had. It was kind of in its infancy. And we were approved through that program. We were assigned a family, and we had a family. We received our notification. Actually, it was on Christmas Eve that we had been paired with a family, and then in January we received the details about the family. They were scheduled to arrive on February 14th, and then, as we all know, on January 20th, that was all put to an end. So the thing that made me really particularly sad about that is that we were paired with this family, and I have no way to contact them. I did not receive any of their information. I have their names still. So, and it's one of those things every once in a while I'll come across a new person and say, hey, do you know anyone who might be able to find these folks so that they know that we're still, thinking about them and, just want to know where they are in their process. But it's really, it's hard. That's the hardest part for us, is not knowing what happened with that family. We were fortunate to be assigned another family in April, who is SIV holder family. And since the SIV holders were still being allowed to arrive, they arrived and they very quickly got connected with some friends who they had in the area, and they just made the decision to move closer to where their friends were. And so then, because they were kind of out of our service area, we were able to welcome another family in May. And so we are still working with that family today. So as you can tell, we've welcomed a lot of families, and it's been a community effort. It really has been. And whenever I think that, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to do this, how you name it. Like I said, it could be furniture. Like this family, when they arrived in May, there were very few funds available. There were lots of resources available previously, but the grant funds keep on getting smaller and smaller. So we had a very small grant fund to work with. And I thought, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're just going to go and we're going to figure it out. We had temporary housing for them for their first 30 days that was paid for by Community Sponsorship Hub, and in a partnership with Airbnb. And then after that, we just, we kind of had to figure it out. And we did. Every step of the way, we've had people just turn up and say, hey, how can I help? So I just want to encourage people to don't be shy about asking, because people want to be asked and they want to help.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, which is actually, I wanted to ask this question to the three of you, and it seems like you answered it already before we move on to the next conversation. How Americans can support at this moment. So Josh, what kind of support you want Americans to do now? From and you, it seems you're already doing advocacy. Is that the place you want Americans to step in? Or are you fundraising and you need support on that? Like, what exactly you want Americans to support you with? And similar, Anna, like, if you in 30 seconds, what Americans can do at this moment. So maybe we go with you, Josh, and then Anna.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing is the advocacy. You know, because it we have a tendency to have a short attention span in the United States. There's few of us that are, like I'm connected to Afghanistan. Um, and then Jennifer, thank God she's gotten into it, and Anna, of course, she's connected as well. And so we're still here, and we remember these things. We'll still post about them, but for everybody else in the United States, it's just kind of like, oh, hey, focus on this or focus on something else. So the biggest thing is continuing to bring it back into focus with those in Congress and lawmakers and people that have influence to kind of reopen the doors, especially for people who have served alongside us, and then to not mess with linguists, which I've heard rumors. I don't think they're just, it's all rumored to me right now, but just people getting worried about the SIV program, for example, which that's a provision that was passed through Congress. And so continuing to have that advocacy is the most important. The next thing that's important, of course, is fundraising. And this might be part of like something that I need to grow in to get better at, because I have no background in fundraising until this whole
You
full
have an
year.
expert here, Jennifer. You might connect with her after the call.
I might, that'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, fundraising would be definitely the second biggest thing for sure. So
Thank you, Josh. Anna?
So I see the question that was posed to me from Ibesma in the chat, and a little bit of my response will address that. You know, we say advocacy, and Josh is so right, and he is correct, right? Afghanistan isn't the news in the news anymore, right? The crisis is Israel and Ukraine and other places. But let's talk about Afghanistan. I'm in operations. You're going to hear the operation, the real reality of on the ground, right? It is not a safe country. It is not safe for anybody. The Taliban issues edicts every day that suspend so much freedom. There is no freedom, right? Right now, women and girls in Afghanistan are given a sentence of death through isolation. The Taliban has isolated them from the world, from their own life. They can't go to parks and recreations. They can't work. They can't go to school. They can't have a job. What if you're a widow? They're on the streets begging, right? Part of what Task Force Argo does is we provide food packages to those in Afghanistan and Pakistan that are SAVs and Afghan allies waiting on their visas to be processed. We have a very secure on the ground trusted network to do this. We hear the stories, right? We talk to Afghan allies every day that are in need. But the women, what do you advocate about? You advocate about the Afghan allies, but also the Afghan women, right? They can't even be in their own home. This is an edict. They cannot be in their own home with the windows open if a passerby could absolutely see them through their own home's window. They have to shut their curtains of their own home so a passerby won't see them. They're dressed, head to toe. It is atrocious what is happening, and I will go to bat against anybody who says that Afghanistan is safe and that people can return to Afghanistan and our Afghan allies aren't in need to have relocation and resettlement elsewhere. Afghan allies want to come to America, but Afghan allies want to go to any country that will provide them safety. We are in communication with Canada and Germany, and there are other countries still taking our Afghan allies, right? There are NATO allies that worked along Afghan allies. Their immigration process is different. Task Force Argo communicates with them, but we work on the process to America for the population we serve. But advocacy, I from an Afghan ally's mouth himself, he said, Anna, it's been ebb and flow. We take every administration and we deal with the punch that hits us, and then we come back from it, and we're hopeful the next administration will do better by us. This was a 20-year war. Afghans have been relocating to America since 2001. A lot of our cases are family reunification cases. Sometimes they don't just need a whole welcome group like what Jennifer can provide. Sometimes they just need somebody with a car. They just need to be picked up from the airport to get where they're going, where the rest of their family's at in America. And I love that Community Sponsorship Hub is so creative with that sponsorship circle and understanding what they can offer. And we do connect those Afghan families with the needs that they are requesting for. Afghan Ally Safe Arrival Coalition with Task Force Argo welcoming initiative for newcomers and community sponsorship hub. We have had 3,384 submissions, requests for help. Many of those are not eligible. Only about 20% are eligible for relocation and resettlement to America due to travel documentation and types of immigration cases. But we have helped 646 come to America since January of 2025 through the generosity of so many people. An airline has donated airline mileage points. There's been donations. There's a 0% interest humanitarian travel loan, right? It's equivalent to what IOM was offering in the beginning. And we have 145 booked for travel here soon. But they all need some type of resettlement support or the full gift that Jennifer can give, right? The whole welcome circle, because they are going to a location that they don't know anybody at. But to the question that was posed in the chat, somebody who has COM approval, so Chief of Mission approval, which is only the fifth step of a 12-step SIV process, the reality is that it can take 2 years for that visa to be processed all the way. So we give the best advice we can, and that is integrate into society as the lowest level possible option that you can and wait it out until your COM is approved. And you can then travel to another country where there's an embassy. Only travel to that country when your visa interview has been scheduled, right? There's no need to go to another country and face a new danger. We know Afghanistan is dangerous, but Pakistan is dangerous. It's a new danger, right? So at least you know what the danger is in Afghanistan. Every situation is different. There are people running, there are people hiding, there are people in different villages staying with distant relatives. There are people that are in Pakistan in danger of deportation. I do not have the answers. Task Force Argo does not have the answer to an individual case. We just present options. There is no safety anywhere. It's unfair to our Afghan allies what has happened to them.
Thank you so much, Anna. I see Josh hand up. I don't know if you have comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the fact that Afghanistan is not safe. Um, People they, they want to pretend, oh well, everything's fine now. Everyone, all the grievances are gone, but people are still being hunted down. Service members are being hunted down. Linguists are still being hunted down. As soon as the fall of the Afghan government came, the Taliban had control of the MOI and sorry, the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Defense, and so it's all these records. And they like one of the guys that I got out in August of 2021 had Taliban come to his house looking for him because they were going to kill him. And he has had a 5-year-old son. Now the son is, I have to do math now. Sorry, 10 years old. In Texas, thank God. But that is still going on today. It's not true. It's that it's a safe place. It's just not. So that's another reason for people to get into the advocacy for the Afghan people.
Thank you so much, Josh. I I just wanted to make sure people understand what Anna shared about the numbers and also add to these numbers the many we have who have traveled to the US and thought they don't need a sponsorship. And then they realize after a week or 2 or 3 weeks how hard to be in a new place, even if you have a relative. So we have also many Afghan families who identified the needs for sponsorship after they arrive to the US. And Anna and her team have been doing great job in educating the Afghan families overseas about the importance of having sponsor groups, about the importance of really coming to cities or towns where sponsor groups already ready with housing and employment to welcome them. So I'm really just sharing in this moment, and I know our team put it in the chat. If you are interested, please submit your application and welcome Afghan families. Please step in and sponsor because we do need support. We need communities to step in all around the country, small town, big town, rural communities, cities. I have been talking with the sponsor groups who already finished their 90 days after they have welcomed since January in small town and big towns. And the stories that I have been hearing about the welcoming work, it's really inspiring. And I really encourage you to step in now to submit your sponsorship application, and we will do our best to match you with with families who you identify that you can support. So I just want to uplift that what Anna shared. It's time now to really step in and support if you have not done it. And if you have done it already, do it again, as Jennifer have shared. People doing it over and over and over, and we do need your support now. So now I wanted to go to my really last conversation is really to talk about sponsorship and advocacy, which we already talked about it. So it's really now time if you want to share things that have not been shared already. But maybe I can really focus on since the work you have done in the past 4 years with the Afghan communities, what have inspired you and or surprised you? So think about it. I want to start with Jennifer this time. Through your sponsorship journey with many families, What have been inspiring mostly to you, and what have surprised you, even if it's really fun stories to share with the community here?
Wow. There's just so many things. I mean, I'll tell you one standout moment for me was the very first family who I met back in October of 21. That family has four children, and dad could speak a little bit of English. He had decent English. Mom did not speak any, and the kids did not speak any. And the kids really had a hard time in school initially. They had the benefit of living in a community where there were a lot of other refugees from Afghanistan. Um, However, that's sort of a good thing, bad thing, because if you don't get outside of your community, you don't ever get outside of developing that comfort with speaking English and hearing English. They're mostly hearing their native language instead of hearing English. Um, and so it really took them, it was a big struggle for them in school. And every time I'd see them, we would sit down and, try and read very basic books. And it was, I'm going to say it was about 2 years in. And every time I'd go, I'd say, okay, let's sit down, let's read a book. And I know the kids half the time were like rolling their eyes, like, oh my gosh, when is she ever going to stop with the reading books business? And the oldest boy in the family, he came and sat down just very casually, and he just read me the book. And I could not, I was so stunned. And I don't think his parents really understood that he had finally gained fluency. Even though he obviously he was speaking better English. He had been, like making little progress that I could see. But for him to just sit down and full on read a book to me, it just that for me was just such a big achievement. And I mean, I know that I made such a big deal of it. Like I was, just so excited for him. And I think the parents are both a little bit like, why is she so excited about here? But it's like, that's the key. Like he has the keys now, and he is an avid reader. Like they cannot keep him in enough books. He is always asking his parents to go to the library, take him to the library and get more books. So it's just those little, it doesn't have to be a big thing you do. Something as simple as sitting and reading a book with each of those kids when I visited them. And that just kind of unlocked, I mean, for me, I just feel like that's unlocked a whole new world for this, young man. I mean, he's a seventh grader now. And so he's just around the corner from those critical high school years. And so he has a real um, opportunity, and he understands that. He really understands that that's really key. So for me, that was a big achievement. Um, and I mean, there's so many things like that that have happened, but I'd say for me, that was just um, unlocking his potential. It is just really exciting. And to see that, and to see that scenario play out with other families has been really exciting. And for them to understand, I mean, they really, another family who we've worked with, they have um, five girls and two boys. And so the five girls had never had any education prior to coming here. And their excitement about going to school, they'll leave me little voice messages and just say, I'm so excited. It's the first day of school tomorrow. Like they just are just brimming with excitement. And it's sort of, um, I would say it really strengthens my resolve to help when you hear that. And when I can share that with the people who are the supporters of these families, to just share those little bits with them of these successes and the excitement that these kids have about just going to school, which we so take for granted as Americans. So that's what I can share about that.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I can see your excitement on your face. I cannot even imagine how that moment was when this kiddo read a book. I think like I want to give it to Anna because I know how big the work she lead But she gets also very excited when Afghan families arrive to the airport and share pictures and share testimonies. I just wonder, Anna, if there are specific moments that you feel like it's inspired you and continue to push you forward.
Thank you for that, Basma. I did spend some time in Northern Virginia with a great organization. I think it's Nova RAF. And the young children were at a youth center and they were learning English as a second language, ESL. And when I sat with this group of young girls, middle schoolers, the instructor asked them to write their sentence on their white erase board, their dry erase board. And this Afghan girl wrote, um, I am not too okay, okay. And I knew what that meant. Everybody knew what that meant. And I took the marker and I wrote, I am not okay, also. And we held hands. And she cried and I cried. And what I want to share is that we may not speak the same language, we may not have the same faith, we may not have the same culture, but we have the same emotions. And they really need just a little bit of, kindness, compassion. And then the second story is Rochambeau, rock, paper, scissors. The young kids couldn't speak English. And I immediately put my hand out. I play it with my 6-year-old all the time. It's our family game when we're waiting in lines, right? Rock, paper, scissors. And when I started to do that, we hadn't been able to communicate at all. But when I started to do that, their face lit up. And she played, I don't know, 20 games with me. And other kids wanted to come and play rock, paper, scissors, as well. And it was so fun. And I asked one of the older children there, I said, who could speak English, I said, so you guys know this game? And they said, of course we know this game. We don't call it rock, paper, scissors. And I never found out what they call it, but they do. They do rock, paper, scissors. And it was just, that's how we connected, right? Um, and then the last piece is just advocacy back on that, Basma. The last thing I would love to share is that, and I had to write this down. I looked today on the State Department Special Immigrant Visa Quarterly Bulletin, last published March 31st of 2025. There are 127,514. So 127,514 SIV applications submitted. There are only 10,000 visas remaining. Each visa counts as one for the principal applicant. Family members, you don't decrease the number based on number of family members. So that's 10,000, 12 families that could be assisted. So Congress is bipartisan. There's bipartisan support for this. Task Force Argo is actually founded by Iowa State legislator at that time in 2021, now a member of Congress representing the 3rd District of Iowa, Zach Nunn, and also former Special Army, Special Forces in the Army, Jesse Jensen, and then quite a large other board members as well who care so much about our Afghan allies. It's bipartisan support, but we need more than Congress, right? We need the other branches as well to get involved. Um, so just please remember our Afghan allies and the Afghan women and girls. And thank you so much for joining today. And thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Anna. Josh, any stories or even call to action from your side, however you want to take this last.
Absolutely. Sorry if I drop off. I keep getting an internet connection unstable message, but yeah, there's a lot of kind of instances of hope. Just encouragement over the years, mostly because it's a because over 4 years you take the small victories and that's what you kind of focus on is the little wins. um so seeing the family go from like my main applicant spoke English, but it was kind of a broken English, to and then none of the other family members except for the linguist and then another brother that's in France, um no one spoke English, but now they like as we progressed over 4 years, they all started studying English to prepare and to creating. You know, I would talk to them about what do you want to do in your future? What's your dream job? I want to be a dentist. Oh, I think I want to work in IT work. One of them's like, I want to be an MMA fighter. I was like, have you ever fought MMA before? He said, no. I was like, okay, right. Might be a little bit of a wake up, but hey, I'm here to encourage you. And it's very much so the human connection. I love it. And they consider me part of the family. I'm absolutely considering them my family members as well. So that's the big thing, is to see just how determined they are, how sharp, and they're. I mean, literally within, I think, 3 weeks, I was talking with one of the brothers in English. I just was like, oh my goodness! Like, I studied Russian for 2 years, and I can only say, I want this from a grocery store. Brilliant, and it's so encouraging to see how adaptable we are. Obviously, since January, we've had to look into other options, but um, very determined, and they keep their spirits up very well. And I just love that about them. They're very strong. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, I am so glad that I hear stories of hope and really opportunities for kids and girls in education. And this is all what we want for all our kids. So I'm really thankful for your commitment and leadership. The three of you, what leads us really to continue this welcome and to keep our promises. I also want to really thank you, our teammate Stephanie, who has been answering questions in the Q&A section. If there are any questions not answered yet, we will reach back after the webinar and make sure all your questions answered. Please check the organization who have been listed in the call today and really support the efforts that's been uplifted in the call. Thank you, Anna, Josh, and Jennifer, for your honesty, courage, and leadership. And thank to everyone who have joined today. The recording and resources will be shared, and including information about next week application support session. So if today you are inspired, which was the goal, next week come to our application support session and submit your applications so we will be able to match you with an Afghan family and you live all of this inspiration yourself in your community. So as we really close today, I want to leave us with this thought. Welcome is not a one-time act. It's an ongoing commitment. And together, through sponsorship, advocacy, and solidarity, we can keep that promise alive. Thank you so much for this conversation, and see you in the next conversation. Thank you so much.